right. Call to order the December 6, 2023 Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. You want to do roll call for us, please?
Of course. Adrian Koster. Kester. I always get it wrong, so I'm making a change there. Twyla Harrington.
Here.
Shelley Reynolds.
Here.
Jenny Abling. Will Knight.
He's excused.
Kevin Minkoff.
He's excused.
Woodrow Terrell.
He's excused.
Chris Barney.
Here.
Diane Castillo. Victoria Rizzo.
Here.
Shelby Stephenson.
Here.
All right. Okay, Mr. Christmas, you want to lead us in pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I am not seeing Sandy on my Zoom. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, so public comment on non-agenda items. Nope. Anyone on Zoom have comments on non-agenda items? All right. Mr. Young, I think that means you're up.
Already?
Already.
Well, you may be Mr. Christmas, but I brought a little with me also, Chris. So, but thank you for adding the tie. You didn't have the tie on last night, did you?
No, I just have to go to the dance.
It looks nice. But I don't understand the message on your hat. With all of that regalia, and you have bah humbug on your hat.
Okay, so I'm a very big fan of the story of Scrooge, and I've been in a production of a stage production of it for a few years. Just represent that part.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me come tonight to talk about the role of the Community Advisory Committee. I just changed how I was going to start this presentation. So there, Ray has a tendency sometimes to go rogue, and I'm going to go rogue right now. And I'm going to keep it easy for you because I'm going to ask each one of you to answer a question before we start, to make sure that my mind wasn't blown as from what you're going to hear in a minute, as my mind was when I prepared for this presentation. Shelby, in 10 words or less, you don't have to go very long. What do you think the CAC's responsibilities are?
I think we're supposed to be the voice of the citizens of this community in bringing things to city council, or city council to talk to us, and us to engage with the community to feel like how they feel about issues.
Okay, good. Shelley?
We are the liaison between the citizens of Troutdale and city council.
Okay.
I concur with both of their statements.
Oh, that's easy, Twyla.
I know, you started.
Adrian?
Basically concur with that and sort of expand on it as being kind of an additional pathway.
Yeah.
Possibly a less intimidating pathway to come for citizens to come to us rather than going directly to city council, as everybody can do.
They can. Okay. Chris? And you can't say, I agree with what they said. It's not going to work.
Okay, can I use the word ditto?
Okay, fine.
I was gonna say, like, I mean, it is similar to what others have said, but I feel like it's always always felt to me like it's supposed to be kind of like in a sense, a bridge between the citizens and the government of the city. Because it kind of allows things to be more organized instead of just all kinds of individual citizens coming to the council meeting with different issues, and then the meeting can take like hours and hours instead of just a few hours.
Okay, Victoria, you're the last one. You've had so many suggestions. It should be easy.
We are the liaison between city council and the public, and we are assigned tasks by the city council to go over certain codes and things, and then make a suggestion to the city council.
Great. That's great because, you know, it's pretty consistent. You think you're supposed to be a bridge, a liaison between the citizens and the city council. And that is true as a very general statement. But when I started digging into your duties and responsibilities and how some other cities and the state directs that you should do it, I have to apologize. Before I started looking into this really deeply, I think that we have, as a staff, have probably not encouraged and enabled you to do as much as you should be doing, actually. But this whole idea, and Dakota's new, he's not to blame at all. Okay, know that, of course. He's off the hook completely. But all cities struggle with this whole issue as to how to utilize their citizen advisory committees or any committees that they have. The city of Gresham is interesting in that the city of Gresham doesn't really have any advisory committees that are just permanent, except for the budget committee and the planning commission. They have to have those. Their code is set up in a way that the council just sets up committees whenever it feels like it. And they tell them to do things when they do. And so in the city of Gresham, they have a charter review committee, a committee development and housing subcommittee, community enhancement advisory committee, design commission, finance committee, Gresham redevelopment commission advisory committee, historical resources subcommittee, parks and recreation committee advisory group, planning commission, transportation advisory subcommittee, urban forestry subcommittee, and youth advisory council. Wow, they've got a lot of committees, right? They must be really busy all the time. Until you look at the article from May in the Gresham Outlook, where city staff came to council and said, you know, we ought to just get rid of all these advisory committees. They're not really doing much. And you're going, huh? And my sense was that if they're not doing much, maybe you're not doing a good job of enabling to do things. So if you want, that article is interesting. It's the May 23rd Outlook of 2023 had an article on the city of Gresham is mulling eliminating groups like the urban forestry subcommittee and all the ones that I just listed for you. I don't know what they ended up doing, but I think it comes out of, they really don't know what they're supposed to be doing. They haven't really thought about their mission statements. The city of Hood River has much fewer committees, but they have a tree committee. When I looked at the tree committee and what they're supposed to do and all the things they list, and then it said at the bottom, the tree committee is currently on hiatus. Something about we have nothing to do. And the city of Beaverton, another one. They have a whole bunch of committees where they've kind of delegated these things out to, like the Beaverton Committee on Aging. They've got the Bicycle Advisory Committee in Beaverton. They have a library association, which is the Library Advisory Board. The Social Services Funding Committee, whatever that is, the Traffic Commission. Human Rights Advisory Commission. Okay, sounds like the UN would have, but Beaverton has one also. So you've got all these committees. I've got Fairview and things like that. You know, this is something, advisory committees is something that's, you know, all over the board in all the cities, but it's pretty clear from the research I've done, it's not uncommon for cities really not to know how to utilize the citizens on advisory committees. So I thought it was just gonna be simple, you know, I just look at your code, you know, the Troutdale Municipal Code, I'll just come tell you what the code says, and it's pretty simple, just do what it says in here and I'd get out of here, right, and go home for dinner, right? Well, I gotta tell you, when I started looking into it, I fell down a rabbit hole. Down the rabbit hole, one of the titles from Alice in Wonderland, one of the chapter titles, because I was blown away at how deep my research went, and I went, my goodness, I never knew all of this stuff. And maybe some of you do, maybe Dakota probably does, you know, that's his job, But I didn't, and I hear from what you said that you may not completely understand, because our code is just the beginning of Citizens Advisory Committee's duties. Your duties are actually intertwined with two very important state statutes and your responsibilities. And it's like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize how big it was. I mean, if you look at the ordinance, it does lay out pretty simply what your duties are, and there's actually 7 duties. If I go through and I number them separately, there's 7 duties in there. You know, one is, and we're going to get back to this one because this is like a nuclear bomb that I didn't realize. Primary element of the Citizens Advisory Committee is created, 1, as a primary element of the Citizens Involvement Program. Yeah, whatever, you know, what's that? Whatever. Number 2, shall review all legislative amendments to the city comprehensive plan. 3, the planning commission may seek the advice of the Citizens Advisory Committee on quasi-judicial amendments to the comprehensive plan. 4, the Citizens Advisory Committee may periodically review and advise the planning commission and council on citizen involvement program. The Citizens Advisory Committee will report recommendations on land use issues to the planning commission. 6, the Citizens Advisory Committee shall also perform other duties or functions as assigned by the council. And 7, the Citizens Advisory Committee operates to provide policy guidance to the council on matters of public interest. And here it gets, guys, what all of you said, which is actually the 7th and way down the list, which is act as a liaison between neighborhoods and interest groups and the city's elected and appointed officials. So you all get an A for getting that one right, but it's at the bottom of the list of all the other things you're supposed to be doing. And when I saw in here that it says Citizens Involvement Program, I go, what's that? What's that, right? I know, I should know this stuff. But I started getting into it and I started realizing that citizen involvement programs have a huge amount of documentation at the state level and in different cities who have gone into this. Planning goal number 1, which is, how many planning goals are there? 20 or something, Dakota? Oh, he's just saying yes. Sure, 20. There's 20 of them.
Yeah, I think there's 10.
It's basically the general guidelines that cities are supposed to, and counties are supposed to follow in terms of how we create and manage all of our land use planning and applications and zonings and stuff. And you always think that the planning commission, oh, that's their job. That's their job. Oh my goodness, yes and no. The planning commission does have a statutory authority and responsibility to do hearings, to do reviews, to get appeals, and to do that process. But when it comes to the whole process of how should we get citizens involved in the whole land use decision-making process, how do we do rules, what should be our land use rules, what should be our codes, what should be our zonings regarding land use, that's supposed to be the Citizen Involvement Committee. That's supposed to be you. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to have this big responsibility. So when I go through and I look at, you know, this issue, and I get into planning goal number 1, and it all comes out of Oregon Revised Statutes 197, each city and county governing body shall submit to the commission, which is them down in Salem, the Lula Commission, LCDC, yeah, on a periodic basis established by commission rule, a program for citizen involvement in preparing and adopting and amending comprehensive plans and land use regulations within the respective city and county. The city is required to make sure you guys are doing your job. But, you know, from what I'm reading all this stuff, I don't think we really know what our job is supposed to be.
I think that's really apparent.
And when I'm done in 10 minutes or so, you guys, I'm actually going to leave you with a lot of work to do, because I'm not going to be able to tell you what you should be doing. You guys have to kind of decide what you want to be doing when I give you some materials, and I can also email it to the people who aren't here. I mean, I'm going to get Dakota all the links and stuff, because when you read through this and you read through what goal number 1 is, which is under our ordinance, you're responsible for goal number 1. Chris, did you raise your hand or just point your finger at me?
I did want to clarify one thing you said earlier, because you read the list of what our duties are according to that.
Yeah.
And and the last one was the whole thing about the bridge between the citizens and the council and all that, and you made the statement that's at the bottom of the list, and I'm curious as to why you said that specifically, because I don't hear that as a list of order of points.
No, but it is the last thing the ordinance says you do. And maybe it's not supposed to be an importance, because they're not really listed that way. I just kind of went and numbered each time it says you're supposed to be doing something. So yeah, it's not necessarily an importance, but with the general human nature of things, usually the first things listed are usually the most important. And you start off with, oh yeah, that's really important, and then you go, what else? And you have to struggle to get down to the very bottom as what else you're gonna add. But it also does say that everything is secondary to number one, the Citizens Involvement Program, because the ordinance says the primary element is what you're supposed to be doing. That's the first thing. It's created. The Citizens Advisory Committee is created as a primary element of the city's citizen involvement program, which is established under state law. So I can tell you for sure that is number one. All the other 6 may be tied for number 2. I don't know, Chris, but good point. But the idea when you look at goal number 1, which is intimately involved in that primary purpose.
Hello.
Hi, Diane, you're here. All right. Should we make her do the homework or not? Oh, no. We'll make her do that. When you go through just the highlights of goal number 1, citizen involvement of the statewide planning goals, it says to develop a citizen involvement program that ensures the opportunity for citizens to be involved in all the phases of the planning process. So have you guys developed that yet? No, I don't think so. To provide a widespread citizen involvement, to assure effective two-way communication with citizens, to provide the opportunity for citizens to be involved in all phases of the planning process, to assure their technical information is available in an understandable form, to assure that citizens will receive a response from policymakers, to ensure funding of the citizen involvement program, guidelines, and it goes through in goal number 1, all these guidelines about citizen influence, data collection, evaluation, plan preparation, all this stuff. And then I really found a great resource that I brought you one section of, and dang, I think I got 7 copies of it because I didn't know how many people actually be here. That looks like how many we actually have. But the University of Oregon has done a whole huge chapter on what is citizen involvement. They even go to the basics. Remember, you are the citizen involvement program for the city of Troutdale that has a huge and wide history and explanation in state law. It starts off with what is citizen involvement? What is a citizen? What is participation? I mean, this instructional guideline from the University of Oregon is very detailed on chapters and how to go about a citizen involvement program. And when I go through all of that and I look at what they have and what they're providing, chapter number 3 is the framework for citizen involvement. And the framework for citizen involvement goes through about 5 or 6 pages of how do you go about being a citizen. It says, goal 1 calls for citizen involvement programs, but who is to design such programs and carry them out? The answer to that is a combination of local committees. I'm paraphrasing here. The most important is the local committee for citizen involvement. That is you under our ordinance. So I'm going to hand this to Dakota, hand out to, just to give you a flavor of what you guys need to start thinking about when I run out of here, if you don't throw things at me for all the work I'm giving you. Reading through it, and then we will get to everybody online who's on the committee. We will get you also the link to all of the chapters. But this is just kind of a primer to give you an idea of what the resources that the University of Oregon has put together for a citizens involvement program, which is your, again, quoting from your ordinance, the primary. Did we run out of, you've got, a perfect number. How did I guess? For all of you. So that's a great way to start. But the second thing that I looked at too is Troutdale just alone in not knowing all these things that you guys are supposed to be doing? And yes and no. A lot of cities don't have anything like this at all. They don't have this definition. But I did find that West Lynn and Lake Oswego were 2 examples of cities that have really gone hog wild in figuring out this and coming out with very strict and good explanations. The city of Lake Oswego, and this is only the second thing I'm going to give you, just to give you guys some things to start working on. But the city of Lake Oswego in 2018 went through a process of let's updating our citizen involvement guidelines and our program. And they went back and they were updating their 1990 plan. And so all I'm giving you, this is like a 30-page document, and I'm just giving you the first 5 pages to let you know their staff report on why they're doing an update in 2018. And then it gives you the title page for the 1990 plan. And it gives you just kind of a couple paragraphs and the actual the index for this long. And we will get you the link to this. Dakota, remind me that we'll email everybody here and the link to this full thing from Lake Oswego to the things that they did. But this kind of gives you an idea just to kind of read through and get a feel for it. Dakota, here's the other one I made enough copies of. 7 for everybody here. And again, this full document and the full University of Oregon document, which I think are fabulous resources for you to understand what does it mean to be a citizen involvement program. I mean, if that's our primary purpose under the ordinance, we don't know what it is and what we can do. This is something that Lake Oswego got really involved in. So we'll have that for you. We'll get the full chapters from University of Oregon when they went through and really detailed what it really means to be a citizen involvement program. Oh, dang, I killed a couple extra trees more than I needed to. Yeah, that's all right.
I'm sorry.
We'll give it to Dakota one, that's fine. And the other thing, and this one, did I also do the right number this time? This, I think this is the one from West. Oh, this is also, oh, this was more of the Lake Oswego one. Oh, this, what did I do here? I think these are more pages from another Lake Oswego document where they go through and they go talk about the Commission for Citizen Involvement, the local group appointed by the City Council for these purposes, assisting with the development of a program that promotes and enhances citizen involvement in land use planning, assisting in the implementation of citizen involvement program, and evaluating the process being used for citizen involvement. That's all what you're supposed to be doing. But Lake Oswego really went into the detail on that, and they list, the CCI will, and they list 15 different responsibilities you're supposed to have. So it's a great example for you to read and go, huh. Now there's a couple extra pages here that were just part of the print I had to do. But if you look through these first 2.5 pages, of the 15, it goes through, I'll just throw you out a couple. Recommend specific input methods, task force, advisory boards, committees for citizen involvement in review or implementation of adopted comprehensive plan when the choice of appropriate procedures and methods needs clarification. Organize town meetings. Meet at least annually with the council to evaluate citizen input methods. Publicize the citizen involvement guidelines. Encourage the formation and continued activity of citizens-initiated neighborhood associations. Lake Oswego takes it, you're supposed to be out there encouraging neighborhoods who don't have neighborhood associations to create neighborhood associations. Make recommendations to City Council on the recognition of new neighborhood associations. Provide, well, this is a good one for you. Provide mediation in the event that staff and a neighborhood association cannot agree on the text of a city-supported neighborhood newsletter or flyer. My goodness. Anyway, these are, you don't have to do this stuff. All right, I'm just giving you an example of what other cities over the years have done with the same charge that you have from the ordinance and your responsibilities. And so it's really important that before you guys talk about how you want to bite this big responsibility off, because a lot of it is really how much of it you want to take on and chew on. And my suggestion is that you work among yourselves and with Dakota to kind of talk about what your mission should be, because quite honestly, even the council is unclear what you should be doing. Because sure, the last thing is if the council asks you to input on something, I say last thing, Chris, I know, it was tied with number 2, I get that, okay. But even the council, thank you, Paul. Paul Wilcox doesn't have his picture up there. I don't know why Paul doesn't want us to see his face, but Paul created it and he sent it to me. This exchange from the council meeting about 3 weeks ago, it was on the discussion about Paul had made some suggestions to council about changing how you
fill vacancies.
Thank you, Chris. I was searching for that word, fill vacancies. And so here was just a short snippet of the conversation. And Councilor Glantz is going to be mentioned here at the beginning. Hi, Councilor Glantz. Councilor Glantz, I have a question. Is this something that we should have CAC look at, just to be objective? Mayor Lauer, I don't disagree with that. Councilor Ribma, my comment would be don't defer to CAC unless we are in favor of it. If we refer something to them, it makes it seem like we're endorsing it. I truly think that. So I don't think we should refer to CAC unless we favor it as a council. Councilor Glantz, I think that's what CAC is for. Councilor Ribma, my feeling is that if we refer to them, it's like we want them to endorse the idea, whatever Paul was suggesting that night. Mayor Lauer, I don't not like the idea. I always love double negatives. Mayor Lauer says, paraphrase, I like the idea of sending it to CIC, referring it to the CAC. I feel it is the purview of CAC to deliberate and chew on things like this. I don't necessarily see it as a council endorsement sending it to CAC, and I think we only send things that we want them to approve. I feel that's not necessarily using the CAC to what their potential is. So the council still talks about that you guys have potential, you're quoting the mayor there. And I think this information that I handed out to you is just a little tip of the iceberg, actually, of what the things you should do. Adrian.
So one of the questions that kind of started us down this rabbit hole was really a very specific mechanical one, in that if a citizen like Paul Wilcox comes to CAC as he did with a concern, what is the mechanic that we as a committee can use to take something like that from the citizenry as the Citizens Advisory Committee and take it to City Council? Is there a mechanic for that?
Well, great question. And I say this at least once a day with staff, with the public, excuse Ray, because sometimes he thinks out loud. So excuse me, because I'm actually processing what you asked, Adrian, because if you look at the ordinance, it's also perform other duties or functions assigned by the council. They shall be specified by motion or resolution of the council. In this regard, you operate to provide policy guidance on the matters of public interest. So we always kind of say, oh, we can't do anything until council asks us to, right? However, if you go back to the primary element of the citizens involvement program, if you actually go along with the primary purpose of the citizen involvement program and you read through some of the stuff and the stuff we're going to email you to read through, you may end up looking at that stuff going, we don't need any permission from city council to explore anything we want. And we can give them all the recommendations we want on anything. And we're going to go out in the community and we're going to rile up, things for people to come to, events to come to, for people to give their input on. I may be creating a problem here by saying all these things for you, but honestly, when you read this stuff, your responsibilities, when it comes to your core responsibility of being that body that advises the council on a whole range of information, you are the primary state statute ordinance authorized community involvement program committee. I think that purview is, when you read this stuff, it seems really, really large. And you guys will have the ability to some ways kind of set the parameters of what you would like to give opinions on and advice on, and how to get the community involved in how you create those opinions. I think that last one talking, or the sixth, the council giving you, asking you to do things, I think that if you don't think of things yourself, actually, I think that's just a catch-all that, hey, there's maybe something you hadn't thought about or hadn't been involved in, council do. But I think this would indicate, and again, you're gonna have to read through it, work with Dakota on this, but I think if you read this information about what a citizens involvement program is, you may find that you have a lot of self-determination on the things that you want to look into and give your opinions to council. Because as I read, when you read the chapter that I gave you, and then you read the rest of the chapters that we'll email you, you're kind of supposed to be the generating body for what the citizens are concerned about and what the council needs to aware about what the citizenry is concerned about. And it started off with, you know, the planning and the Department of Land, you know, the DLCD, I always get those letters confused out here, the DLCD. It started off with planning and zoning and things like that, but the way a lot of these cities have taken the statute and taken the direction from goal number 1, you are given a lot of rope to do some things. And I think at this point, my suggestion would be, you know, read the stuff that I got to you, read the stuff that Dakota's going to email you that's kind of the more complete stuff of I just gave you a I didn't want to kill too many trees tonight and overload you with just tons of paperwork, but just kind of this is kind of a sample. So read those, digest it, and then come back to your next meeting and then really start delving into whether you want to be working with Dakota. And again, he's going, Ray, you're giving me more work to do. But he's new, he's young. He'll enjoy working with you on this because you're all great people. I really appreciate the time you spend on this. And I've known, gosh, all of you in the one-on-line for many years. And I think you all are just amazing, capable people with great ideas. And I just love your heart for this community. So I think you guys are a great body to start looking into this and seeing, we maybe want to start to come up with some guidelines ourselves, our own, like Oswego, you know, they come up with a 30-page document as to what the CAC and the CII, that's one of the other phrases they use for it, and then come up with a proposal and take the council and say, we would like you to take our suggestions on what the goal number 1 and what the statute says our duties are, and actually memorialize it in a resolution that gives us this charge that involves all these things. So I guess what I didn't come with specific answers for your question is what your role is. I came to tell you that your role is a heck of a lot bigger than I ever imagined. And quite frankly, it is for you to define what you're comfortable doing and want to do. With all that kind of dumping on you, all that stuff, like I said, I was fascinated. I learned so much stuff when I went through this. And hopefully you'll learn a lot too when you get the rest of the material. But any questions on all this stuff? I may not be able to answer it, but.
I think a great place would be making the same presentation to City Council and the Planning Commission.
You guys are more important than all of them. I'm gonna talk to you guys.
No,
because
I actually did listen to or watch the City Council where they were talking about it, and thank you, Councilor Glantz, for your support always. And I was relieved a little bit when I heard Mayor Lauer and Councilor Glantz disagree completely with Councilor Ritma's opinion of our role. I was unfortunately, I didn't hear any other councilors really comment on that, so it was hard for me to gauge where their opinion of our role was in that presentation there, that discussion. But I do think that there is some confusion even at the higher levels as to what our role should be. Which does open us up for a very, very nice 2024 goal, and that's defining what we do.
Yeah, my suggestion is I'm more than happy to involve, because if it comes to council, we'll do a full staff report. It'll include all this stuff in there. But I think if you get council involved, well, we've already involved Councilor Glantz. I discussed this a little bit with the mayor this morning, and I have some sense of feeling that Councilor White may hear some of this stuff too. I don't know, I just sense that he may hear this stuff.
Yeah, he will, because in the past, a previous planner, the scope was presented differently. And not to say it was right or wrong, so I'm just saying there might have been some preconceived notions.
Right.
As what we do.
Right?
Yeah, and it just seemed like that our duty was if to be assigned tasks basically by council. That's my recollection of past discussions at council meetings and to us at CAC. So this is good
Yeah.
information. It's nice to be able to see then what cities do, and then to know what's potential is in our scope and to create it.
Great, so I will email to you tomorrow those 2 links to the full material from Lake Oswego, and then the full, gosh, it must be a 50, 60-page document from the University of Oregon, because they have a pretty involved planning degree program there, don't they? Yeah, and that's one of the things they did. They created this whole pamphlet booklet for citizen advisory committees who have this responsibility. And so it's just fascinating. Like I said, they even want you to talk about what a citizen is and what does participation mean. So that's why reading that stuff would be great.
Oh, I was just gonna say, can we also look at the Oregon statutes that you mentioned?
Yeah.
The 2 of those,
All
I
right.
think that's a good baseline, and then we can see how other areas.
Oh, and goal number 1. Yeah. Here, I'm gonna give these to Dakota right now, so he'll have the note on that. Here's the Oregon revised statute on it, and then the goal number 1, and, oh,
119.
yeah, and this is, oh yeah, attached here to the back is West Lynn did a whole bunch of stuff on it too. So if you want to send that to them too, but just for your reference, you know which statutes, you don't have to go look it up yourself.
Perfect.
Dakota, I would love to have Westland. Westland, I actually was
Yeah, that's attached
there.
there.
That's prior to being in Troutdale, and they're a more comparable size to Troutdale than Lake Oswego is considerably larger than Troutdale, I think. Whereas Westland is closer to Troutdale size.
Well, I think we're like 17, West Lynn is like 30, Lake Oswego 50 or something, I don't know. Yeah.
So I'd love to see what Westland did as well.
Gotcha.
So, anyway. Oh, Bah Humbug is asking a question.
Okay. Guess I'm partially trying to figure out how to word this, and I will say to my fellow committee members, no intent to throw anybody under the bus, but I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. So, I guess one question I have for you is that basically the way this whole conversation started was when we were in a previous meeting discussing false concerns about how vacancies are filled and all that. And it got into the question of, like, can we recommend something to council about this and that kind of stuff, and thus we started talking about our role as a committee. And this is great, but it's coming from other cities and things like that, and this would show us, you know, what we could do, perhaps what we should do in some cases, and what I'm wondering is how do we go about implementing this, because I found out through the discussion we had that some of our members are pretty strict about following the city code to the letter. And so I almost felt like the code would have to be updated or changed for them to be amenable to doing more things here.
Couple comments. One, I think what happens in any organization, no matter how big, how small, there's something called momentum. When you start doing things a certain way and you start going down a route, everybody just who comes into that system just keeps doing it the same way. Nobody goes back to square one and say, all right, let's go back to square one. Like this, what really is our basic mission? What's our charge? What's the source of it? Where does it come from? But second of all, as we just went through, and you're going to read through it, Chris, and your own self, from what I can see, anybody who's strict on wanting to follow the Troutdale code is going to go, well, the code based upon what it says and what we're supposed to be, because it refers to these programs in goal number 1 and the code. This is what you're supposed to do. And then when you start exploring what those couple short lines in the code say, and you read what it means, the code gives you guys, I think, a lot of leeway to start creating your own parameters of the things that you want to do. Because as I said, the code actually lists 7 different things that you're supposed to do. And it makes, like I said, primary, that citizen involvement program. But the code doesn't say what the citizen involvement program is, but it's clearly referring to the state statute in goal number 1. So we have to go to, we get into construction of ordinances or statutes. If a statute refers to some other statute or rule, you get to go and include that in the ordinance. And so since the community involvement programs is your primary goal, and there's a whole body of work and documents that tell us what a community involvement program is, the code basically says all these piles of documents are included in the code. Does that make sense? So, anyway, so like I said, I just, thank you for asking me, because like I said, I learned a lot, because I didn't know this stuff.
Well, I think we're getting a lot of information we didn't have as well, so thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Like I said, this is just
From
the
the
beginning.
gallery?
This is just the beginning for you guys to start exploring this and reading and studying and start creating something and create some headaches for council, because you're going to come and say, hey, this is what we learned. This is what we want to get involved in. Huh?
So
Not trying to mimic-
Counselor
yeah.
Bland, it's Ray's fault.
Yeah. Sorry.
Are there any members of the public on Zoom that have questions for Mr. Young? Can you tell me if somebody raises their hand?
Oh, Paul shows his face.
Oh,
Hi, Paul.
This is Ellie, Paul Wilcox, Troutdale. Just have some very brief observations. I've read the municipal code more than once describing the duties of CAC, and it strikes me as more like TCAB, a planning commission light. And I also think, or have observed, that it seems like council has misused CAC numerous times, having them deal with charter amendments, budget issues. So there's confusion on both ends, and if CAC strictly follows what's in the municipal code, as I said half a minute ago, it just looks like a planning commission light to me.
Yeah, it's interesting, on Paul's comment, the planning commission has specific statutory duties. They do the hearings, they make actual decisions that are legally enforceable. But your body here under the rules is to be more advisory in terms of changes to the development code, changes to zoning and things like that, which I think traditionally, you haven't been around long enough to know either, that's kind of gone to the planning commission, like they're supposed to have been doing that and making recommendations about zoning and development rules and the development code, when it sounds like that you guys are supposed to be working hand in hand with them. And you maybe even primarily be doing those reviews and recommendations to council to make changes to our development code. So, but that's something to read through and work out, talk with Dakota. He's the expert on planning rules and how things go. I mean, these goals, I don't have them all memorized. I don't know what they are. And I didn't know goal number one until today was this goal. That's your charge. So it's just something, and I don't know that council has misused this group. I just don't think they've used you enough. Yeah. And not because they intended to, because I don't think anybody on council, was aware of this. Maybe Sandy will disagree with me, she's listening, or Diane may have, and Councilor White may know these things, but I can't fault them, because I don't think that they are fully aware of what the code actually said about what your job was. And again, that whole world of community involvement program that it opened up to you that we didn't realize had such long tentacles under Oregon law. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anything else? Okay, you want to get out of here?
All right. So I'd like to propose that we keep this on our future agendas for continued discussion. Having just come off the Parks Master Plan, it feels a little bit like that, then, doesn't it, Victoria? But I do think that we need to set out some specific definitions for this committee and how this committee can best help Troutdale and Troutdale citizens. And maybe that's our job, is to take this committee back to square one.
I agree. I think it's a great idea. I'm looking forward to reading the Oregon statute to kind of like really understand what that responsibility might be, and then reimagine how we integrate that and become more functional and more purpose.
I think it also could lead to us having an easier time filling our committees and just maybe we would find better ways to engage. Maybe we get better results on surveys. I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is the beginning of more citizen involvement. So it's good. It's really exciting.
Chris?
So, and I'm sure some of us are already thinking this, but I think that if we're wanting to discuss this and maybe implement some of this into what we do and everything, I think we definitely need to have a talk with council, because I was thinking about what Ray had shared when he read that piece of the transcript of that previous council meeting where Councilor Ripa was concerned about it might sound like they want us to recommend a certain way if they give us a topic. And I feel like that would be a big area of contention, because it reminds me as a historical note of when we were asked to give a recommendation on a certain topic. We told them what we thought and they went against that anyway. So like, in one way that could have seemed like they were looking for a certain answer, but there are other ways that that could be viewed. So that's something we need to sort out too in order to have a better habit of communication, I suppose.
And it's interesting to me. I actually watched that and heard Councilor Ritma's. It was interesting to me how different those city councilors that spoke up viewed the committee. Interestingly enough, I don't think Mayor Lauer really committed one way or the other with double negatives. It was a little difficult to understand what he was trying to say. I think what he was trying to say was that he also believes we're underutilized. And it was an interesting meeting. I would encourage all of you to go back and listen to that, at least that section, if you get a chance. Yes, Adrian.
Yeah, it definitely was. I was listening in on that meeting, and personally, I think the direction that we seem to want to go, based on at least the direction we can go, based on the initial information from Mr. Young, I think would, to a large extent, get around the fears that Councilor Ritma was voicing in that meeting, and to a large extent, I don't disagree with his sentiment, because if you say to a body, what do you think of this specific policy proposal? There is, I think, a natural human tendency to assume that the people asking you, what do you think about this, are largely in favor or on the favor side or neutral of whatever that thing is. If they just say, open up the city charter and ask and tell us what you want to do with it, there's no policy direction there. So I mean, there's no, the idea of an implicit bias and implicit direction, I think, is not an unwarranted fear. That said, we can do whatever we want with questions that we get from city council, or apparently things that we can get from the citizenry, but having it flow up to city council from the citizenry, I think, would very much alleviate the concerns that Councilor Ripa was voicing.
That's interesting, because if city council brought something to us and I were to think about it, I would think that they brought it to us because they couldn't agree on it.
Yeah, you're not wrong either, right? And
I would say they're looking at us to help figure out the answer.
It all depends on kind of your perspective, and to a certain extent, some of how you view any particular policy decision would very likely be dependent upon how much background you actually know. Because if you have no background, you might assume kind of what I was saying earlier, and what Councilor Ritma was saying. But if you had listened to a previous discussion by city council and heard an enormous amount of back and forth with not a whole lot of consensus, you would have the background and say, city council doesn't know what to do with this. They're not leaning any one particular direction. Let's take this and run with it.
Right.
So perspective is everything with this kind of thing. And it's so situational as to where things can fall that I don't think we necessarily need to worry about the optics of it all that much.
Mm-hmm.
What I think is far more important is just getting some agreement and starting that communication path, basically doing what we want to do at the very earliest stages, to what Chris was saying, and get the council involved and say, we've opened up this can of worms. We want to go down this route. Is council in agreement with that, or are we just going to waste our time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that no discussion on this topic is going to be a waste of time. I think it would be, I guess where I would want to start is to look at our current code, figure out what it means to us as a group, at least majority, and figure out how we want to expand on that, and maybe not hit city council with the whole, spend months and months and a year working on this, present it to city council and have them shake their head and say, yeah, no, we're not doing that. But maybe taking it to them bits and pieces at a time, saying, these were kind of our thoughts on these objectives or these goals. What are your thoughts on this? And, you know, typically, I know Councilor Glanz is not supposed to participate in our meetings, but for the purpose of this discussion, I think that really having an ear saying, oh, you know, somebody who knows city council, I know you have an in there, but it's harder for you to be able to convey just what Councilor White.
Yeah, and I don't ever represent him, just to know that sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't agree, and but all my comments, the comment that I made tonight was just from observation of how the function of CAC was used, because I mean, I'm excited about looking at the word organized town meetings, you know. We had talked about that to try to, for the candidates coming up, and then opening it and do a lot of advertisements so we get people that are interested, and then also we talked about having the other committees here, so people have voluntary or just understanding little boosts, so they could, you know, just get to know us. But some of the most exciting meetings in the past have been the town meetings, and I've been wanting those so much because they were exciting when this whole room would completely fill out. When we actually, there's been very few, but it's something that's exciting. Another thing I recall we talked a lot about at CAC, we never did anything about, was if we had signage on the outside that we could put, like city council meeting tonight, you know, put one of the topics and then just say time open to public, or, you know, it's a CAC meeting tonight or whatever. At least it starts getting people aware of, and then and the opportunity to participate in the community, even though we are doing a good job on Facebook. But then I'm also remembering when we talked about chickens, it would have been really cool to, before we had our meeting for the chickens, to give it a couple of months and have the city of Troutdale Facebook, we could have put chickens out there and say, hey, you want to talk about this? We're talking about it. Come join our conversation. So if we have a topic, we could maybe wait 3 months and then advertise it for a bit so that we could see if we get any more community members involved. There was one gal that did come, which was really good. And that was nice, but there might have been several, so that we could just, you know, have a more inclusive conversation of the most potential citizenry that we could have, besides our own experiences. We were talking about what we bring to the table with our own experiences. Hopefully, I try to research a lot of times before I come here as well too. So it's just not my experience, but what the community has to say is really, really important to me.
I've made more friendships with neighbors just by asking them about stuff here. That's how I do my research, is I just go around my neighbors. That's how, you know, I knew the pickleball issue was unsupported, and I mean, there's your neighbors have a lot to offer. You just have to talk to them. So I propose we put this on the agenda. I am sorry that Woodrow, Will, and Kevin weren't here tonight, because they are very strong members who have definite opinions on these things, but I'm hoping that they would go back and listen to this meeting, and we'll make sure they get these handouts and links, please.
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions on this topic, folks?
We'll pass everything out to Woodrow for you.
Oh, that's why you're here. Well, tell him we missed him tonight.
That's not why we're here.
Oh, that's not why you're here.
Well, we see him all the time.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. So, can we, yes, Chris.
I guess one last thought I would share, just to, I guess it's kind of, I agree with the sentiment, is that I overall, despite what I've been saying, overall, I am pretty excited about this, as I feel it'll give us more things to talk about, and now we can actually have meeting topics based instead of doing this like every other meeting. So.
Yes. Oh, are we, anything else to add? Is Paul the only public online? I'm sorry, I can't see him here. Great.
Yeah.
Paul, anything else to add tonight?
Yes, Shirley, actually I do. I wanted to direct a comment to Chris specifically. Couple issues that you received from council, the top 3 voting and council stipends. What's interesting to me about those is that when they're forwarded to CAC by council, there's a roll call vote. So you know who's in favor of forwarding to CAC and who's not. And in both those cases, both those issues, the councilors that voted against sending it to CAC, also CAC's response was in support of those councilors' positions. So they got the answer they wanted, but they didn't want to ask the question. They weren't, I don't think they were confident enough in their position to risk asking someone else. So I just wanted to make that point, that it was interesting that they got what they wanted, but they didn't want the CAC involved in getting it.
Thank you, Paul. All right.
But to amend my last comment, also, I do agree with you about putting it on the agenda for next year.
Yeah, I think this is a 2024 goal, is take CAC back to square one and make our committee what it can be, how it can help Troutdale in the best way possible. Yeah. Right? Moving on to discussion items. Dakota, was there anything in specific that we needed to put in there?
No, just left it in there. I wasn't sure if there was anything that anybody else wanted to bring up outside of staff communication, or outside of
there is one
council
thing that's
committee.
going to get discussed tonight, and that is RSVPs. I have been told that I have the authority to make this mandate. And I am going to tell you, you have until Tuesday at 11 a.m., the day before the committee, to submit your RSVP. If you do not submit your RSVP and we do not have quorum, Chris Ann is going to let us know, and we are going to send out a cancellation. 3 people RSVP'd. I had to call everybody else to find out. And while that was okay because Ray was going to be here, it's important that we give Chris Ann the notice that she needs to cancel speakers, to send out cancellations. She works until noon, so 11 a.m. on Tuesday is the deadline for our SVPs. And if we don't have quorum, the meeting will be canceled.
Do you think, because sometimes we get multiple emails, and so I'm not sure which one she wants us to RSVP to?
RSVP to the first one.
Okay, so,
The first one you get, RSVP to.
okay.
Yeah, the one where she sends out the electronic copy of the agenda and stuff.
Yep. Yeah, and she does ask, I think she asks a couple more times after that, especially if she doesn't get a lot of response. Hey, if you haven't RSVP'd, could you RSVP? But if we don't have quorum by 11 a.m. the day previous to the meeting is going to be canceled. Okay? Okay. So you might want to also check before you come to the meeting, make sure that it's going. Because I think those RSVPs only go to Dakota and
Chris Ann.
Chris Ann.
Yeah.
Generally. All right. That came across a lot less grumpy than I was to begin with, right?
That's a good thing.
Can I ask have they spoken today?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I've asked him a couple times.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you asked if we wanted to speak on non-agenda items,
Oh.
and I thought that the development services under staff communications fell under the agenda.
Oh, it does. We're not there yet, almost.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thanks. I've been keeping tabs on them.
Okay.
All right, so that's my one discussion item. Anybody else have anything? No. All right, now we're on to staff communications.
All righty, I'm gonna go ahead and share my little one page that I typically have here. There it is. Pull it up. There we go. So staff communications for today's meeting for December 6th. Oops. There we go. A couple of things going on within development services. Case file LU 00132023 for the Sandy River Run townhomes was approved on 11/17. That's for the four townhomes down off of historic Columbia River Highway. So that one was approved, the decision went out, the appeal period has ended. And then next is we have a potential guest speaker. So Chris Damgan, the previous development services director, he now works for the Port of Portland. He came to me asking if he could potentially, doesn't have a hard date yet, so it potentially will be in February, more likely, because he said he would let me know right now. He just had another child, so he's on maternity leave. So he hasn't been checking emails, which is totally fine. But he would like to either come here and speak with us about some potential changes to the port. We wanted to get some information, kind of give a presentation of what they're thinking and different things that are going out there. I don't have any more information than that. That's exactly what he told me. So I can't really answer a whole lot of questions because I don't know yet. I think it's still really early phases. He's hoping for February. It could be later on, to whenever they kind of are ready. He did mention though, prior to when he would come do the presentation, if we want to do a field trip to the location instead. Now, of course, that depends on where it's going to be, weather, if it's going to be outside, dark, weather, might not want to do that. I don't believe that's what it is, but he'll give you more information. Of course, I'll pass that information along as well, so we can make that decision if we want to have a little field trip that day to see what's going on at the port, at the airport. And then on planning director, recruitment for our open planning director position has closed. I believe next week they will be conducting interviews. So Ray gave us a brief discussion or a brief update today. I believe there's 4 candidates that they'll be interviewing. and they said he's very excited about the pool, so that we're looking forward to that as well. I will not be on that interview panel, I'm too new, so I don't have any other information. I think he just got the information from the consultants that we had doing the recruitment yesterday. So it closed on 11/19. And so the consultant does an interview of all the candidates first, and then brings forward the ones they feel are the best fit for the position. So we will be conducting interviews late next week and the hope is to have a new planning director by the first of the year. Heather's been doing a fantastic job as interim. I think she's excited to have a little bit of stuff off her plate, because she's definitely been burning the candle at both ends. She's been very busy, so I think she's a little excited to see what candidates we have and have someone step in and help lead us again. This next one, I was at this meeting, I had it changed, if you noticed from what I sent out, I changed it, sorry, it was a last minute thing this afternoon, because I wasn't sure exactly, I did not stick around, but the dogs on leash ordinance went back to city council and for the first reading, and I thought they were going next week to the next city council meeting, but I don't believe that's true. So I'm not sure, I wasn't able to stick around for the end of the meeting. So I just want to give an update that it has come back to city council. So they've updated it from the last time, and that's something that's going on right now with parks.
Thank you.
Chris.
So I was just gonna ask on the one about Chris Danigan wanting to come talk, would that be like, since it sounds like that's more likely to happen in February, would that be like a discussion item for January to decide whether we want to do a field trip or just have him come here?
Yeah, when I have more information from him, that I could add it to the January as a discussion if he gets to me in time. He'll let me know well in advance. So if, say, he doesn't come to the February, then that'll be a discussion item for the February to see if that's going to be the best. I think he has to get some stuff, figure out exactly what's going on. I think he wanted to take us to one of the buildings, but I have very little information. He just kind of said it in passing when he stopped by one day to talk with our director. So, but yeah, I will give everybody well in advance the information so that we can kind of make that decision. If it'd be better for him to come in here. I'm not sure exactly what he's planning on, if he has like a presentation or if he just kind of wants to do a walk and talk and get some feedback on something. I'm not entirely sure. I just wanted to bring that forward to let you know that he is very interested in speaking with us about the book. So when that comes, we will let everybody know.
So do you think this has to do with the airport? Or
The airport, yes. Sorry, the airport.
The Portland airport or the
Troutdale Airport, yes.
Okay.
Troutdale Airport. So, and that look, again, I don't know exactly what's going on. But he said it has to do with Troutdale Airport. And so yeah, we wouldn't be going into the Portland Airport. It would be heading down to the Troutdale Airport for whatever he wants to talk to us about. Sorry, I wish I had a little more information. I just wanted to throw it on here to get everybody, keep everybody informed that, hey, we potentially have our previous former planning director coming to speak with us about Troutdale Airport and what's going on. Yep.
Any other questions from committee? No? Nope. Go ahead.
So my question is, I watched a committee meeting from a few weeks ago about the Sandy River and townhomes.
Mm-hmm.
And there seemed to be a lot of confusion amongst the committee as how that was gonna get passed. And everyone was thinking it wasn't gonna be approved because they hadn't submitted, from my understanding from watching the meeting, they hadn't submitted the paperwork correctly and they had left a lot of stuff off. So I'm wondering if you could tell me how it got approved, why it got approved without the information that the committee was so concerned about, and then what the next steps are with that project.
Yeah, so they were concerned about a delineation report because the entire site is located within the Vico district, or the Vico overlay. So that's our slopes and riparian zone. So they were concerned about not having a delineation report for the storm catch basin to be constructed within the floodplain and within the riparian corridor. That is a permitted use within that zone. That is a permitted use within the floodplain and within the Vico. We, as far as our code, everything they submitted was approvable. However, it did get sent to Department of State Lands for the state, because anything that's done within wetlands has to get sent to them for review. They submitted their comments back, and they had a couple of comments regarding the potential of cut and fill that's going to occur. They're only doing a 2-foot basin, and it's going to be a natural infill. They had a concern regarding, while the basin is within the requirements of not needing a cut and fill permit or delineation report, the trenches that they'll be digging in order to have the pipes going to the catch basin may cause it to go over. And it is a salmonoid, it's a potential for a salmonoid habitat. So what their comments were is that they recommend, now they can't condition because they're not the city making the decision, but I can as the planner. So they recommended that they submit a delineation report and have an expert go out to review and see if it is in a salmonoid habitat. And if it is, then they would have to have a permit with the state, not with the city, but with the state in order to do any cut and fill. So that is a condition of approval, because it meets our code, that's a condition that they have to meet prior to submitting building permits. So they have to submit that to me for review, that shows that they had a professional go out there, review, have their report saying that it's not, and if it is, then they need to have that cut and fill permit with the state prior to any development occurring. So that's how it was approved. As far as floodplain, our floodplain manager, we have a consultant. We do not have a floodplain manager in-house. The consultant did the review. They had one comment whether the structure was going to be within the floodplain. Her comment was that there's a back patio that's about a foot, maybe 2, that extends into the floodplain. That's an approved use. A patio can be built in the floodplain because it's at grade, it's not hindering. Now, if that patio was covered, then it would be considered the entire structure, the entire building would be considered in the floodplain. On their plans, they showed clearly that it is not a covered patio. All the others that are outside of the floodplain are a covered patio. So since it was not a covered patio, it's not in the floodplain. However, that is a condition of approval that they have not yet received their floodplain development permit approval. So they need to receive that prior to any other future building permits, grading permits, anything else being submitted. So they have to, there's a couple of things that they have to do before they can move forward with development. And if they don't meet all of those conditions, there weren't that many for planning, but there's a couple for fire, a couple for public works engineering that they need to meet prior to submittal. So that's how it was able to be approved, is those are some conditions of approval. If they don't meet, they have to meet those prior to moving forward with any sort of development. Their permit is good for 2 years. If they have not broken ground within 2 years, the permit expires. So they're on a clock now, in a sense.
So the next step is to submit plans, actual building plans or building permits?
For them, their next step is to get a delineation report completed by a professional.
Okay.
Complete their floodplain development permit. They just need to resubmit to show the document, which they've submitted to me, but they haven't submitted to the system for review. That's going to be their next steps, is they have to submit those. That's the first primary steps. They also have to they'll submit for right-of-way permits with the county because they own Historic Columbia River Highway. So they have to submit right-of-way permits for any work being done there. That was one of the conditions, and they understand that. And then after that, then they would submit grading permits as long as they meet all the standards that were conditioned by Public Works to make sure that they have all the systems properly in place to connect, and then they'll submit building permits after that. So they have several steps to complete within the next 2 years.
And fire, you said that they would have to submit to, I mean, like right now, there's barely a fire lane at all within the park. And if you've got, so I live in the park, I own a business here in Troutdale, I have an office in Troutdale, I love where I live and I want to continue living there. So our concern is the traffic coming in. I don't know if you guys have ever come down to the RV resort. It's a lovely place. on Fridays and Saturdays during the summer, we'll have 20, 25 people checking in, and sometimes they'll back up to the street, and they're big rigs, and if you've got people,
25 at a time.
not at a time, but during the
Three to
day,
four.
three to four at a time, and sometimes that'll get backed up, and so my concern would be to fire is if there was an emergency for a fire truck needed to get in, either to one of those new residences or to a resident of the park, that's gonna be a problem if you've got, depending on where those houses are built and what their garage access is or where the parking is. So my question is, will there be more public comment open in the future? Will there be, how does that work to voice concerns to the people that will have to figure this out?
Public comment is closed. The public comment period was prior to the decision being sent. So public comment's closed, so there won't be any public comment. You can always voice an opinion and or a concern to us at the city. We can, obviously take that very much into consideration while reviewing. As far as fire goes, they have conditions that were added to the notice of decision, and they also do an additional review during building permits. So a building permit will not be approved if they don't meet fire code as well. So that's kind of like a double, where they get a double review, where in Public Works kind of gets a double review, and then I'll also get another additional review to make sure that what was approved in their land use case file is still meeting the standards when they submit building. I've had experiences in other jurisdictions where they approve something, they come for building permits, and it's very different than what was approved. And that's not, if they're going to change it, they have to go back and do a modification to their approved plan. As far as traffic goes within that area, they do have permission to use, they do have rights to use the private drive. That was approved during the subdivision, I believe that when it was done back in 2009, because they bring it up to 5 homes. If it goes to 6, then they would need to have an additional access. So that's a standard that is already been approved. And as far as the traffic aspect goes, that's something that the developer has to just understand when they're going to sell those homes, that there is traffic that builds up. Because it meets the standards of parking requirements and drive aisle as far as our standards go for planning. As far as use goes within someone who lives in the area that understands that and sees it on a day-to-day basis, that's something that the developer also has to take into consideration when developing. But it's an approved use as far as our code goes, because they meet those standards as far as traffic. I know it's not the best answer, but as far as we look at it as planning, we have to look at it as a clear and objective bipartisan view. And as long as they meet what's written in the code, there isn't a barrier to development in that regard.
Okay. Well, I know, so I travel for a living, so I wasn't here for any other meetings. They were not assuming that it was gonna be approved. And so when I saw the notification that it was approved, that was why I was asking. Because it seemed like in the committee, they were like, there's no way it's gonna be approved. What's the appeal process to getting it approved? So I was a bit shocked when I saw it was approved.
On that note, when it comes to the committee, with their review, they're a review agency of the city. So because they're a city committee similar to us, they did submit comments, and their comments were not, they submitted a potential condition and it's not enforceable by our code.
Right.
So I added it as a benefit to the applicant, so they have all the information that was submitted. However, the comments were received late, past the comment deadline, and then also the condition that they proposed is not an enforceable condition. And as far as appeal, a city committee does not have the ability to appeal a city decision. So it would have to be a public comment that was submitted within the public comment deadline or comment period, because then if that's something, if I say I'm the planner, I was the planner on this one, if I did not properly show how they're meeting the code based on the the concern with the public comment, then that's grounds for appeal, because it's a public appeal. As a city committee, there is no grounds for appeal. So that's kind of why, I think they didn't really understand that fully at the committee, from what my understanding was.
It was pretty clear they didn't understand that.
No. Sorry.
Thank you.
I appreciate your comments and questions. We're always, something I want to let everybody know is that we're always very open for calls. Come on in, see us. I know you travel a lot, but if you ever have a call or a question, email. We're always very open to discuss these types of things. So I really appreciate you coming and asking questions. So I feel like sometimes people aren't always necessarily feel comfortable. Yes, exactly. And as a planner, I want to have
And as listening this evening, you're representing us.
Yep.
So it was good to hear this, that I'm sorry that you're having trouble about. I'm sure you'll work it out.
We have a goal for next year.
That's right, we'll fix it. All right. Paul, did you have anything further you wanted to chime in about tonight?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you. Are we done? Any questions? Counselor Glenn?
Yep, I just wanted to thank everybody for all their work, and having been on the other side of this and, spending a lot of time working on things and having council overturn it, I am more than familiar with the feeling of, we spent a lot of time on that. What in the heck are you guys doing? Now, having been on the other side of that, just for me personally, I always appreciate hearing, other opinions and other feedback, because a lot of times there's just things I don't think of. But that doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to agree with that. And I know it's hard, but I truly do appreciate all the work. I just don't always agree with the final outcome. So.
Well, we appreciate the fact that you're always here to agree or not disagree with, or not agree with us.
Yeah.
It's important to hear stuff in context too. So it helps me.
All right. Victoria, anything to add tonight?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Mr. Christmas, anything to add tonight?
Well, I guess based on the discussions we've had, I'm excited for next year, and then we'll end off with Merry Christmas and New Year, and because I'm not a Scrooge, to quote Tiny Tim, God bless us, everyone.
It's actually my favorite story too. Adrian?
And happy holidays to everyone, and definitely looking forward to the new year. One other thing I wanted to mention is I read a very interesting news article talking about Gresham Fire Department, saying, and basically they were complaining to the Gresham City Council, and I only bring it up because they obviously serve us too. They were complaining to City Council that their active staffing numbers have not changed since the mid-90s. And they have the same same quantity of 24 on-duty firemen that they had when the city of Gresham was half of its current size. So I guess I should not be surprised, given that, that our response times out of the fire department are what they are. I'm not sure what, if anything, we're going to be able to do about it, considering Gresham is what it is, and they have no money to fix it either. But it's something I guess it's a piece of context to think about when we as a city try to figure out how to make services better for our own citizenry. So anyway, happy holidays to all, and that's it.
Thank you. Great. Well,
Yeah, just kind of in response to what he was talking about, we did have Victoria, I think you reported that subgroup, and a couple other people from different committees that are looking at city contracts and renegotiating things like that. So hopefully, I think that was supposed to go to council
Tuesday.
Yeah,
So if you want to come to council Tuesday.
Yes, yeah.
You'll hear about the contracts for sheriff and fire.
Okay.
Suggestions.
Mhm. And what else? Oh, looking forward to our new project for 2024, and I hope you guys all have a wonderful holiday season. Sophie.
So, great meeting, really excited about what's coming in 2024 for us. And hopefully we'll get more and more citizens involved. Yeah, and so it's good. And Merry Christmas to everybody.
I appreciate Rayanne coming this evening. I love to get informed. And also, I have a suggestion when we do meet with Chris about the port. I know it's up to scheduling, but usually the first week in January, that's when we have our ice storm, our annual ice storm. So I'm suggesting February, only that I think it's really important that if we get to walk the airport. And the reason is I participated and went to a lot of the meetings that were held at Edgefield where they had a committee and they were discussing to shorten the runway, to lengthen the runway. And that was really interesting because there was a lot of different aviators and different people, that professionals and other people on that committee that were having a robust conversation. And I did sit in on all those. So it was interesting to see what the port was wanting, what the aviators were wanting, and what any changes, how it did affect the type of planes that got to be in there, or future potential for maybe FedEx or somebody else utilizing it in a commercial way. So it's just a very interesting conversation to me. And I got to ride a small plane just this year that was really, Troutdale's so beautiful in the air too. It's beautiful in the land, it's very beautiful in the air as well. So I love where we live. And just a suggestion, if we get a pick between the 2 months. And also the Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to all, and thank you to our chair, co-chair, and to you as well, and everybody that helps us get informed, and Kirsan, anybody that helps us have these meetings, I thank for this year. Thank you.
Special shout out to Chris Ann. She went above and beyond this week. She and I struggled with, do we hold or do we cancel this meeting? So I'm sorry if there was confusion about whether or not it was going to be held or not. The confusion was on everybody's part. I didn't feel comfortable canceling it outright on my own, but only 3 RSVPs came in and we need 6 for a quorum. So that's why the new policy is going into place, that we have to have 6 RSVPs to hold the meeting. She's just wonderful. She's always so generous and so happy to do whatever we need to do. It's like, oh, Chrisanne, could you send out one more email, just one more email? And so a special shout out to Chrisanne, especially this week. She's been very patient with me. And I just love serving with all of you. I look forward to these meetings more because I get to see all of you than just because of what's on our agenda. So thank you for being my friends in the city and sharing this experience with me every year. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please? All right.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you for coming.
Shelley, I am so sorry. I don't have
I was
anything
in the
outside of
TCAP
November from
meetings
Chris Ann.
That was